Okay, so let's begin. Before anything else, can you just introduce where you work and which country you come from, please?
Okay, so my name is Anne-Marie Bytes. It's my husband, Mark. We live in Dublin in Ireland, and my company is called the Paragraph Challenge. So I work with adults and children in the area of education, so dyslexia, dyspraxia, ADD. There's a vast array of people that I work with, all learning styles.
And can you tell me a little about that? You say you work with children in the area of...
So my son was diagnosed as a dyslexic learner when he was 8, but I knew he was dyslexic from the time he was 5 because I'd done a lot of research, and he had an older sister, and I knew what they were offering in school was not working for him. And so I did a lot of research, read a lot of books, and I read a book called The Gift of Dyslexia. And so I knew straight away, and I said, yeah, that's definitely my son. But at the moment in Ireland, and I think pretty much everywhere else in Europe, that they don't give official diagnosis until children are about 8. And so he went along in school and he was successful in maths and a lot of other areas, but not with English. So then I found somebody who did the Davis method in Ireland. And that's when I decided I would train to support him initially. And then I just loved it. And I gave up my job as a financial controller and switched to education. So I provide one-to-one programs for adults and children from age 4 up to my oldest client was 81-year-old lady. So who was worried about her dyscalculia because the society has become so cashless that she was like, prior to this, she was going to the bank, giving them some money, and they would just do all the stuff for her. But now, you know, I don't know what about the UK, but here there's very few people in the banks. Everything's automated. So you're having a lot of options. And it's not great for older people, really. So that's basically what I do. And I've been doing that for 17 years. And it's work I love, and I'm actually really passionate about it.
Just before I come to you, Mark, just a couple of observations or personal anecdotes. The Gift of Dyslexia was the first book I ever read about dyslexia. So I understand why you went down the Davis route. It was inspiring to me. But also, I found myself in banks having to change cash into notes. And the hard-pressed workers in the banks didn't have the time to help me. And I couldn't, because I couldn't count. Because there's dyscalculia with me as well, and the humiliation and the shame that I felt being unable to count coppers and translate that into pounds. And
that is very common. And I remember my son going, even though he was quite good at maths, but I remember if he was going to buy an ice cream, he loved Magnums, he'd always have to have too much money. So he didn't want loose money. He'd have to have €3 coins, because it was, I don't know, 2.30 or something. So he wouldn't take 2.30 or 2.50 just in case. He had to have more than he needed. And whenever I ask my students, they're all the same. They don't have to add in their head or try to figure out, if I have this and I spend, how much will it just give me? His favorite thing was just give me paper money.
Sounds a bit like Bob Geldof. Well. Give me the money.
He used to say that to his grandfather. I don't take coins, only paper money. Now he calls it shrapnel. He says to me, have you any change, Mom? If I give coins, he goes, no, I don't want your shrapnel.
That shrapnel has this idea of danger to it anyway. So, And Mark, can I turn to you and ask you your position here?
Yeah, well, I work for myself. So, and I have for a very long time. So I work, like my company is called Right Frame Academy, which I do training videos, and I help companies who are in trouble and people who are in trouble. And I also have a company called I Travel that sells now electric motorbikes, just gone live as well. So I've always worked for myself, and I probably have worked for myself because I was dyslexic. Because I didn't want people, I think, commenting on my handwriting and my spelling and stuff like that. So it was my way of taking control of the whole issue.
Yeah, no, I recognize that. I've always had trouble working for others and working to other people's administration processes. I think that's part of the the difficulty. But working for myself, I have to deal with other people's administration processes, so it makes it worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can you begin? Can either of you help me? Because I'm interested in what dyslexia is. In Ireland, perhaps the Dyslexia Association of Ireland, or perhaps the Davis Dyslexia Association. What definition of dyslexia do you work with?
So I work with the definition that dyslexia is like a gift. So it stems from a visual and gifted imagination. So we don't look at it as a disability. We look at it that dyslexic people just learn differently, and it's the gift that they have that causes the difficulty in the education system. So the education system in Ireland anyway is primarily geared towards a word thinking way of learning. It's not very visual. You know, it works for half the kids in the class probably at best, because some of them are more tactile, kinesthetic learners as well. And there hasn't been any evolution in the system that I could see from when I was in school to now. So, I mean, I have many teenage students, some are dyslexic, some are not. And it's not working for any of them, because particularly COVID, they realize, okay, so I can teach myself the same information from a computer in 20 minutes. Why will I go to school and listen to the teacher for 4 hours?
Yeah.
So it's I think a lot of the stuff they're teaching in school now has just become irrelevant, and kids have realized, you know, they're just more in tune, and you know, they're smarter, and they question everything, and they realize, well, I don't have to do this. Whereas when I was in school, you know, you respected the teacher and you did what the teacher said, type of thing.
Well, can I challenge you for a second as well, before we move on? You say that according to the Davis method, you look at dyslexia as a gift. And yet every time you see a Davis website, it's called the Davis correctional method. So what are you correcting if it's a gift?
Okay, so I mean, that's not on my website, but well, you are right, it does say that. So they would say that, well, they're not correcting anything. I'm not quite sure what they're thinking behind that wording is, to be honest. Because really what we're doing is we're adding to the knowledge of the person. So you're not trying to change them, you're just trying to add. So you're, I suppose, equipping them to function in an environment that isn't the best place for that type of learner. And so we teach focusing, relaxation, you know, a different way of learning. But we do teach them to read, obviously, and because it's a skill that you unfortunately do need if you want to have access to a broad range of stuff. I mean, you can get a lot of information, obviously, online and stuff. But I mean, to me, I love reading. So, but I know it's not something that everybody loves. But I think that, you know, it's just like any other skill. I mean, I'm not very good with technology, but it is a skill that you need. You know, just like any other skill. That's the way that I explain it to my students, you know. Okay, it's not something that you have to spend all day reading. You don't have to read loads of books if you don't want to. But it is something that's a valuable tool to help you in your life, just like everything else.
So, Mark, you mentioned that you're an entrepreneur because of the reaction people often have to your dyslexic challenges, let's say. What sort of attitude is there in Ireland in general? I mean, is Ireland, forgive my ignorance and my stereotype, I kind of look at Ireland as one or two big cities and lots of small towns. Is that kind of, you know, and in the small towns, there might be a different attitude than the big.
Yeah, I see, it's a smaller mindset. To give you an example, if you're an entrepreneur in America or in the UK and your business closes down, you go bust or things happen because of, for any reason, in the States, people give you a try again and encourage you. In the UK, to a certain extent, here, they don't. Because it's that small view. So that small view is carried over then. Like I wouldn't tell everyone I'm dyslexic at the moment, even still, and I'm in my 50s. I would tell people who I know. Because people will still have, like the first thing people might say is immediately, oh, you can't read. Like I remember when I was buying a company many years ago, and we were paying a lot of money for it, but like the legal agreement was huge. But because of the way I taught myself with photographic memory and remembering stuff, I knew every single piece of that agreement and could pull anybody up who couldn't understand why I could do that. right? But their skills you learn, but also the difference. When I went to school, you were told for a long time you were stupid.
Yeah.
It was as simple as that. I was in the worst class for first year and second year. And then what did I say? Back a year, which was a stupid thing because I wanted to do physics, not realizing there's not a chance in hell I was ever going to do physics, right? So, but I stayed back. So you're told for a long time. And you're like, I always remember I say to people, like the headmaster coming in and telling our class. And when he came into us, we're the third stream. So there's two more streams below us, right? He was telling us, we were going to be the carpenters and plumbers of tomorrow. Don't worry. The solicitors and the barristers and the accountants are in the top class. So you don't have to worry. So you can imagine what he was telling the bottom stream.
Yeah.
But what saved me was I went to work at a very young age on the car ferries because my dad was over the company. I was senior in the company, and I suddenly realized, I'm not stupid. I can make money. I can bring stuff on. Like I was selling bottles of water when nobody else was to charge the Americans. So and that's why. But go back to your original question. I wouldn't tell everyone that I'm dyslexic. My close friends now would know, and I'd be very careful who I tell because immediately I think somebody has a certain perspective of who you are.
Mm.
So and. Yeah, if you're really, really wealthy, you're running a major company, you can tell who you want because it makes no difference.
Yeah.
But like you just have to be careful, and it's an attitude. It's just we're like with a lot of things. That's why I hate the word learning disability. Like to me, it's an ability. Like it's helped me an awful lot to see things and go through problems and do things that I wouldn't have done if I wasn't probably.
Yeah. Yeah. And has there been a change in provision for dyslexia in schools over the last 20 years or something?
Yeah, there has been. So initially you would have to go to a psychologist and get an assessment, a psychological assessment. The only people who could do it for no good reason really were psychologists. And like they charge upwards of €1,000 to provide these pieces of paper to parents.
Very expensive.
Very expensive. Now there is a publicly funded one, but obviously you can imagine that has massive waiting time. So I mean, we had 3 of them done during my son's school time, but we paid for them all privately because like who wants to wait 2 years? I mean, so the provisions to date are that they either withdraw the children from class and provide them with extra support. Or some schools, what they do is they identify from the very beginning that the child is not flourishing. They will, give them a little bit of extra support. And if that's not working, they then do withdraw them from the class. But the actual support they give hasn't changed, if you know what I mean. It's still the same support. So it's kind of a different version of what they're learning in the classroom.
Yeah.
So, and they're not always keeping up with the class stuff. And the difficulty is when they take the kids out, because it's a primary school system, and it's up to each teacher what she teaches at what time of the day. So they could be missing maths when they're out, or something else that they're actually good at. And if you miss a concept in maths, well then you end up with a maths problem as well as an English problem. So it hasn't really progressed. It has changed, and because of COVID, loads of kids now have movement breaks because I think the teachers need a skinny from them as well. So I suppose it has, kids are less aware of it, that it's a problem, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Because there's so many kids. There's ones going for movement breaks. There's ones going for some other break. There's some going for maths, some going for English, because a huge amount of kids are behind now. So it's not just the dyslexic kids, it's also the kids who've missed just because of COVID. And a lot of the content is now, so like I'm seeing kids come to me who are supposed to be at 3rd class level here, grade 3, and they're a year behind. So the teacher is still trying to catch up. So I suppose for a lot of kids, it's not as visible at the moment because everybody's kind of behind. Now, some of my students did much better because they were at home, they were more relaxed, less stressed, and the moms were helping them, and there wasn't, as much as stress on them.
Have you found that there's the particular challenges and advantages of working at home and blended learning or learning from home?
Yeah, I mean, to me there is, and some of my students, now one of my students didn't enjoy it at all. Her mom's a teacher. so mom didn't enjoy it and she didn't enjoy it, and so she was delighted to go back to school. But I think there's definitely, for a lot of kids, yeah, I think a shorter school day would suit most kids much better. Our youngest daughter went to school in a Montessori environment till she was 10, and she finished at 2 p.m. every day. And so the other schools would finish 2:30, 2:45 in primary school, and then go on to 4 and later. But finishing at even a half an hour, 40 minutes earlier allows the children then to have, a more relaxed lunch if they're going to go to a sport, or, a break between that and homework, because a lot of parents are, in the door, sit down, do your homework. And it's stressful. So I think the school day is just too long for a lot of kids. I think 2 o'clock is a perfect time. I mean, I would never work with kids after 3 because I think they're just too tired. Their brains are like, yeah, are we really doing that? So it doesn't matter how entertaining or interesting you are. Like, who wants to, if they're sat and
I'm too tired after 3, so I don't know.
That's what I always say. I'm too tired as well. So never mind.
But we've seen from both angles. So we've seen we have 2 children in normal school who have done very well. And they were private schools, and especially Christian, and that was on purpose because the school wasn't suiting them. But our youngest was homeschooled, and it was Amory who spent a lot of time homeschooling. But it does take a lot of effort. Like, it's not for everyone.
Yeah,
it is not for everyone. And but even go back to the way dyslexia works here, but I think it's the same in the UK. Teachers are still educated and trained to teach in a certain way. And you can have all the government ministers and all the government saying this is a gift and that we should do this and we support this. But if you don't change the basic training, and if you look at doctors always upskill, electricians are always upskilling, like people upskill, and they need to change the approach.
Yeah.
They really do. And I think, and it's not teachers' fault, it's just they're brought in and are taught in a certain way. The amount of time given to dyslexia training is very small. I still hear stories when somebody tells me of even a few years ago, a teacher asking someone to read in the class, knowing they can't read. That's back to my day. That's that, and I thought that was gone. Yeah. But it's not gone.
There's lots of worse stories.
Yeah, but teachers, I don't think it's hard. I'm not trained in Davis. I don't teach Davis. Amory does all that. But I can still tell when she tells me that someone's dyslexic exactly why she's saying that.
Yeah.
You don't have after a bit of training, you can tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then if you have a teacher knows, pulling someone out of a class and missing other stuff, you're highlighting them. And at a time when we're all talking about mental health and all this type of stuff, mental health is mixture of people and mixing with people and talking to people, not in front of a class of 8 or 9 or 10-year-olds. You pull someone out for an hour and everyone wants to know where you're going. They know you're not going to the pub for a drink. They know you're going for something special, right? That's all wrong. It's done all wrong.
It just needs a more integrated approach. I mean, I think it works for all kids. It's not just for dyslexic kids. Most kids enjoy getting up out of their seat, going out. I mean, I know there's a guy that I followed a few years ago, a teacher in the UK, and he teaches outside. He has an outdoor classroom. And just a bit of fresh air, moving around, getting up and down, teaching them to climb a tree, it expands everybody's brain, not just the dyslexic kids. And it's not just dyslexic kids, there's the autistic kids, the ADHD. There's a huge spectrum of different abilities. And I think they all do better in a mixed environment. Nobody wants to be isolated into different small groups. I mean, that's all. You go to work in a company, it's an array of different abilities. Separating kids into different, okay, so this is the way you learn. It just doesn't work.
But the other question about Davis, I've seen children come in here on Monday with baseball caps, head down low, and on Friday, the person that leaves completely different. And I saw it with Christian. The Christian had no problem around 10 when he went to Sister Antoinette in Ireland, going in and telling his friends in school that he could bring a laptop. He had no problem telling them he was dyslexic.
Yeah.
Because the confidence factor is not even the whole program. The confidence factor goes through the roof. You've seen a different person even on Friday.
Yeah.
And parents will tell you that the kids even who are even here at the moment, like one or two of the girls, who they were 6 months ago, it's completely different who they are now. That wouldn't have happened only without the program. And like it's just, and it's playing to their skill set. Now they might be 100% better at reading and maths, but they will do much better overall because their confidence level is so high now that they feel good about themselves. It makes a huge difference.
As a parent, your aim for your kids is to give them skills to be confident, to be able to communicate with people, to be a successful and useful member of society, not a person who's going to stick their head in a book all day. That's not the aim of the work, and that is not what I ever wanted for my kids. Do what you want, but be able to have a conversation, be able to look after yourself, because it's life skills really is what we need to be teaching kids.
It's also to be able what you want to be. Like I remember, well, it must have been 10 years ago now, we were doing a PR campaign in the UK. I was working with another facilitator who's a very good friend of ours, and he had a phone line set up. Like there was people ringing in who were chief inspectors of police forces and senior people of police forces who were ringing in on the phone line saying if they hadn't known there was dyslexia beforehand, they would have gone further in their career. There was a man who retired from the buses. He was retired, and he was sorry that only if he had known what he knows now, he could have been much more. Yeah. Now, he could still be a busman, but he would have been have a choice of being more.
Yeah.
Like nothing wrong with bus people, nothing wrong with all that type of different occupations, but sometimes someone feels that's all they can do. Where if they had the skill set or the confidence or the skills, they can be more.
Whether you can read or not is not the important thing. It's, if you're confident enough to be brave enough to do whatever you want, I suppose.